Hey, everybody, welcome to Riders Meeting. We're going to be covering the Detroit round of the Supercross series this year. I'm David Pingree. I'm your host here, joined by Bruce Murata, as always, and a special guest, multi-time Supercross champion and motocross badass, Mr. Chad Reed. Reedy, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, stoked. Just driving home from a long weekend at the track my own self.
Yeah, you become a full-time moto dad, man, so you're starting the cycle again.
Yeah, doing it all over again. Get to see it from a different angle, so it's fun.
That's awesome, dude. I love to see that. And you've always been so just honest and genuine in your thoughts and kind of calling it like you see it. And I appreciate that more and more. And anyway, stoked to get your take on what's going on. And these shows are brought to you by Rock and Turf. They make the very best artificial grass if you're into that. They also make some really cool mats for your trailers and RVs for changing and just keeping dirt out of your rigs. And if you need landscape, hardscape, they do it all, rockandturflandscape.com. And also by Maxxis Tires, check out their full line of light-duty truck tires. We appreciate their support. So let's start with the 250 class here. Obviously, the opener for the East, and there was a ton of guys who were in this mix. And boy, about more than half of them went down in a pile in the first turn.
Yeah.
Reedy, what did you think of that? And were you surprised we didn't get a red flag?
Oh, I mean, yes and no. I think that, when you understand the back end of everything as far as like TV windows and all that kind of stuff, the fact that it was a day race, we were prime time, I think that there's a lot more challenges than there used to be. So I wasn't necessarily surprised that there wasn't a red flag. But wow, a lot of guys got collected, a lot of guys, races and all from somewhat of a racing mood, but it was a little bit of a bonehead mood too. It was kind of seemed like some of it was avoidable. So yeah, it was a bummer. I'm glad that no one was like badly hurt. Most all got back up. And the biggest comment I would say is, like modern era, you really don't see too many handlebars getting bent. And like there was several of them that had like just ruined handlebars. So it was kind of, I don't know, it was interesting that played out like that.
Yeah, that's Chad, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Chad, that was one of my biggest notes here is seeing how many guys had bent up bikes. Out of all those guys that went down in that first corner, it's crazy how many guys had their bars just mangled,
Bent up bikes and body parts.
Yeah.
Well, and torn pants, which we'll get to later. That was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. But my biggest, like you said, Reedy, I was just stoked nobody was hurt. Man, when Evan Ferry went into the wall, I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
He just missed the tough block. You never know what's behind those curtains. I mean, it could just be metal racking.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of got drove in. Like one thing to hit it, but then several other guys kind of drove him in there. Sounds like he's obviously a little beat up, but he's okay. Hayden got really lucky. I mean, Hayden got, ran over by several guys. And I think showed his, unappreciation to Vial, but I think that from his view, he just seen Vial come across him. But I'm sure when he watches the video that he realizes that Vial wasn't the cause of the problem.
Yeah, I understand frustration, but he definitely has some misplaced anger in that deal because that was nothing to do. Well, certainly wasn't in Vial's control. He just got shot across the track like a missile.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, the guys and where they finished. Austin Forkner came out, and I think a lot of skepticism about how he would do. He's been in the class a long time, and it's just injury. I don't know that I've seen anybody take injury after injury like this kid has. And it says a lot about his resolve to still come back and be competitive to win every time, because it's hard, man. I had a lot of injuries in my career, and it's just so hard to rebuild mentally and physically. And man, my opinion is I didn't never think he looked blazing fast like he used to, but he won his heat and the main, got good starts, did everything right. Pretty impressive.
And you've got to think that he's he's learned something along the way, and that, taking a win when he didn't have that blazing speed like he once upon a time had. I think that's just, stuff where it's a part of the rebuild process. I unfortunately didn't get to watch, typically I watch all the practices and stuff with the kids, but we were, because it was a day race, it all happened, early on when we were busy. So I kind of missed all the events during the day. But I must say that he just looks solid. He looks, like even just looking at him and listening to him on the podium, his eyes look clear. He looks like he's in a good place. And I was happy for him, because you never want to see guys get beat down that many times.
Yeah, of course. Great ride for him. He just, like I said, he did everything right. He got finally some luck went his way. And during qualifying, you did miss this, but Pierce Brown was up on top of the box. And I hadn't heard a lot about him preseason. Bruce, you and I talked a little bit about that lack of anything out of his camp. And so it was kind of a question mark. He did show really good speed, rode well in the main, had a little run-in with Swole, and sent him into the cheap seats. I don't think intentionally. I think they just sort of blocked bars a little bit.
Yeah, no, that was...
What do you think, Reedy? Was that on purpose?
I mean, I don't, the word intentional is always an open one, but he definitely went in there with some intent, and he got the job done, I think. So.
Well, and like they say too, I mean, if they both go down, so he was able to keep it up. But
yeah.
Brown also finished the best out of anyone that went down in that first turn, because he was part of that crash. So he finished 5th after that.
Yeah, to come back to 5th was crazy. So we'll just go through it here. Forkner with that win, another great ride from Max Anstey. And we mentioned him in our preseason show. He was so solid last year. Consistency was his speed, or his strong suit, but maybe not quite the speed to win. And man, I don't know. He was right there on pace all night. And if he can get a start and have some things go his way, Max Anstey, I think, is in this championship fight.
So my comment on Max would be that I watched Max, obviously during World Supercross and Australian Supercross, and he was really, really impressive. I think that, when you've been around it long enough, you've seen some guys that are got good speed, and I don't care who's out there, you just see something special, and he had it. And I would like to see Max carry that confidence a little bit more. Like he downplayed his speed through the off season, and I kind of feel like he downplayed it to the point where he downplayed his position. Like I think he's genuinely good enough to battle and fight for the win. And it was a solid second place, but I kind of personally, over the last few months, I've seen more from him.
Yeah, I think he needs to believe in himself as much as somebody like you does. I mean, you're watching it going, hey, this kid could win. And yeah. I don't know that he really believes that just yet.
Yeah. No, so it was good for him to get a solid podium, and we'll see, how he turns it around, and if he can carry and get that fire like that I've seen a couple months ago.
Hey, Chad and Ping, I want to ask you guys about Chance Hymas. So this kid actually ran the fastest lap time during the main.
I thought he was riding great, and I didn't see what happened on the broadcast. They didn't mention if he crashed or like
he crashed in the whoops, is from what I heard after the race.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, you see this fire out of him. I mean, is this just kind of like that rookie in him where he's just sprinting right away? And
Hymas I'm really confused on, because I read that he posted on Instagram that he had tweaked his knee during the week. And then he was in a bunch of pain, and there's a backstory to that. But what was strange to me was the speed that he had in the heat, and then just like a light switch, it went away. And then main event, like typically when you're in pain, I don't know, it's not like it just like you're good, and then suddenly the pain just turns on. And so it was a little strange for me to see him be so good and so solid, and then suddenly just it all it all like became too much, and then he started going backwards, and then he, like you said, he had a fall in the whoop. So and again, we didn't get to see that on the broadcast, so it was hard to follow that.
Yeah, I wonder if he maybe started getting fatigued. If that knee has been hurt and he hasn't been able to ride and train like he normally would, maybe fatigue set in and he just sort of dropped anchor. That's the only thing I can make sense of. But we didn't really get a chance to talk to him or hear from him after the race, so we'll have to follow up with that.
Sounds like it sounds like, going off of his Instagram, he only did it last week. So I don't know that I think he's, fitness and everything, I think, is potentially okay. I think it was just the pain. It sounded like he was just in a lot of pain.
Well, he showed he's got the chops. He just has to figure out what the heck's going on with that knee. I want to talk about Daxton Bennick. Solid ride for a rookie to come out and throw it on the podium. This kid's been good in the futures events. He's riding with the Star crew and team and his championship contending teammate, Hayden Deegan. Solid ride for him, man. To come out and get a podium your first race out, pretty good.
And it's funny because I'm not that surprised. Like Dax he's always kind of like he's the sleeper, like he's obviously the same age, really good friends, grew up with Hayden, and, Hayden carries a lot of the attention and the media side of it, and possibly, just he's being able to get it done on race days, where Dax can get it done. He's a really good rider. I think technique on a Supercross, he's really good. He's been riding it, since he was a little kid, and I think it'll be solid to see how he takes it from here.
Yeah,
Cody
I heard.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I heard some comments from last night saying, well, I mean, half the guys were out, so he got lucky. But I disagree with that, because his heat race, he kept Forkner honest that whole race.
Yeah, I don't think that was a fluke. He's one of those guys that was going to be up in that top 5 mix no matter what.
Yeah, maybe Dax is the real deal. I think that he's a genuine top 6 guy, week in and week out.
Yep, agreed. What was your guys' thoughts on Cody Schock? He and Jet Reynolds were two of the guys I really thought would come in and surprise. We heard good things from the Club MX crew leading into the series. Of course, Jet, his bad luck continues. He had a tip over in practice and just a hairline fracture in his collarbone, but enough to keep him out for the night, sadly. But Cody Schock comes in with a 4th. Now, again, hard to say where he would have finished in a full field without half of them going down, but solid ride for Cody.
I think that's a solid top 4. And, like you said, there was a lot of guys that went down, and, and it'll be the next race, I think, is Dallas. So just see if he can, grow from that and kind of put himself in the top 5, overalls, and when everybody's there on the start.
Yeah. And then Pierce Brown was 5th. Jalik Swoll, after that little elbow tap from Pierce. And he's lucky he didn't get hurt, because he flew off that berm and landed right on the concrete. But
that was in the heat, though, wasn't it? Wasn't that in the heat?
Was it the heat?
Yeah, I believe that. I think Pierce got him in the heat, not the main.
Oh, that was from the heat. Well, anyway, Jalik did go down. I want to say he was tangled up in that first turn deal, right?
He was one of the. I believe he ran over Hayden. Actually, Hayden was like the one that fell in front of him. Yeah.
Well, to come back to 6th, just like Pierce, great ride, great comeback, and Triumph's first, debut of that bike to have the top 6 for them is pretty dang good. I'm sure they had to be happy.
You gotta be happy. I mean, that's a big deal. I think, launching a whole new motorcycle, and years and years of preparation. And from what I understand, they needed every bit of this time, for the East Coast to really have bikes and parts so that they could make it all happen. So job well done, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what it's like starting a new team, Reedy. There's so many loose ends and things you have to get, and T's to cross and I's to dot. It's a headache.
Massive headache.
Henry Miller, great ride from the privateer. He was 7th. Guillaume Perez, first Supercross ever with an 8th. I think that's
impressive
ride for him. Yep. And then Marshall Welton Knight and Chance Hymas came back to 10th, or dropped back to 10th, I should say. Can I just real quick, have you ever seen somebody's pants rip open and their whole package just dangle for 15 minutes? Has that ever happened?
Ping, we've been around for a long time, and I can honestly say I have actually never seen that happen. So
Never.
pretty nuts, literally.
So our
hey,
photographer guy.
hey, I just want to ask Chad though. Hey, what do you think McAdoo's new nickname will be?
I think he has the potential of several, but oh my God, he's got to be. I mean, it can't feel amazing today.
Oh,
No, we have some photos from our guy that was on the floor. Obviously, we will never post them. It's like
it's bad.
Scissors and just cut his whole crotch of his pants up. Everything. He is fully the full Monty, bro. It is wild. I would have just pulled into the pits and went, nah, I'm out.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an OnlyFans sponsor after this weekend.
I'm calling him Sackadoo, but
Sackadoo.
And I wonder, like you know, like you obviously, it's a kid show very much, so it's like I just wonder how known it was to everybody. You know, like I wonder if, like, you know, there's fans there that could see it, and obviously a photo, you see it, but I'm like, I wonder if it was, because I mean, obviously the broadcast has a delay, and so they have the luxury of being able to go, okay, we're not going to put the cameras on him.
Do not go to McAdoo. Do not go to
McAdoo. But like I just wonder if it was something that that everyone knew, what was happening.
Well, and they might not have even caught it during the show. And if that's the case, I don't remember really Cameron coming on the camera, so they probably did.
I don't either. And again, just knowing the backside of all that process, that there's that built-in kind of 30 to 45 seconds where they can, make sure the editing team is doing their job.
Well, I think that there was a lot of guys that we didn't get to see. Deegan, McAdoo, Hammock, or Vial, Ferry. Sounds like they're all no major injuries, certainly banged up and bruised, but we'll
Romano.
be able to see them. Yeah, when the series goes back east. So I think there's a lot of questions still to be answered in that class. Let's jump up to the 450 class. This is the Rock and Turf 450 division here. Jet and AP got their heat race wins. And really, Reedy, I want to start with telling me what you think of this series so far. Obviously, there's a lot of chatter about it just being a really fun, competitive season. And you've been involved in a couple of these back when it was you and Ricky and James, but maybe K-Dub, so like a 4-guy battle. But there's kind of 6-7 guys who could win, which is pretty, rare to have that many guys capable of winning races.
It is. And like when we kind of roll off of, 2023, the way it went at the Nationals, and then the SMX, and then, Jet winning the first race, I think that there was a lot of bracing themselves for the Jet show, and I still wouldn't count that happening, because obviously this past weekend he handled those guys pretty good. But it was nice to see the guys, some of the OGs, Coop kind of getting in there, and Eli, geez, I don't know what happened to him this weekend, but like Eli, a couple of races, like, and Chase getting in there, and then AP finding some power. It was a good, and even Anderson at the last race, like he kind of had that last one that wasn't great, but just, it's good to see the fire back. Everyone seems like they have pretty good package behind them. Like everyone genuinely seems like happy with the bike, and what I see from a balance standpoint, like everyone's pretty good. Now it's just about who can get starts, and I think that that's going to be key, because starts are so important in Supercross.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I will say I had a chat with Michael Byrne at Anaheim, who works a lot with the Lawrence boys. And I don't know what kind of secret Aussie clubs you guys maybe meet in or conversations you have, but he said, dude, you haven't even seen the real Jet. He goes, when I watch him practice during the week, it's like watching a video game. It's unreal. He goes, and when he goes to the race, somehow he's more subdued. And, if he ever figures out how to race like he's practicing, it's over. Like, it's over. That was come out of Burner's mouth, and he's pretty straight up, straightforward. Not going to blow a bunch of sunshine up my rear end for no reason. What are your thoughts on Jet? Because I still think right now, after just going off what we've seen so far, I think he wins 8 to 10 races this year and wins the title.
I think Jets, I think that last year speaks for itself. I mean, he's very clever. But then I must say that we've seen him vulnerable this year for the first time. Like anytime he was challenged last year, he always had the upper hand. Like I've seen a lot of things that he was just genuinely better. Where this year I've seen just a little, chink here and there that's part of the process, and I think that you have to realize he's still a rookie in Supercross on a 450.
He still can't buy a beer legally. I mean,
yeah, right. And I think it just shows you that how gnarly the premier class in Supercross is. Like I think he's very good, and some point to last year he was perfect, and then yet Supercross still forces your hand, and I think going off of the Burner comment, I think that that's probably very true. My only comment to counter it would be just, more teammates that I've had from Monday to Friday. If that guy could show up on the weekends,
right,
they'd be heroes. Jet's not shy of showing up on Saturdays and showing everybody what's up. But it doesn't surprise me that it's somebody of that caliber is even better on the weekdays. So yeah, I think everybody really needs to they need to stay on it, and I think that anytime that they can. It sucks because it's hard for me to comment on it because I think the fact that Jet's Aussie and I'm Aussie, it's sometimes my comments always seem to be picked apart more than they should be. But I just see it for what it is, and I'm just a general fan of everyone. And I just think that what the Webbs, the Tomacs, the Andersons, even now Sexton, being weathered a couple of seasons in there, they're gotta take a shot when they can. Anytime he leaves the door open or if he gets a whole shot and it's the second turn, I think you have to rough him up. He reminds me a lot of James. You can't let him get comfortable.
No.
So you gotta be and that's why I think Cooper has somewhat of the best chance, because he's like that little chihuahua that will go at your heels all the time, and just and keep coming and keep coming. And I feel like that's what they're gonna have to do to get Jet uncomfortable, because I think that if I agree with you in the fact that if they let him whole shot and control the race, I don't think that they can have a whole lot for him.
Well, Chad, that was my biggest question for you tonight is, if you were in your prime and you had to race Jet, how would you get him off his game? Because you're always great at that when you race James and whoever it was. So I think you pretty much answered that question right there.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's like Anderson, I believe it was the heat race. He kind of, threw it up the inside of Jet. I mean, you'd go out of your way, ram him,
yeah.
And again, not ram him, that's, I guess, the wrong word, but anytime that you could get in there and rough him up, I'd be all over just that, just rough him up whenever you could, because you just have to do it,
Well, at the end of the day, and I've said this before, we talked about this even last summer. I said, Chase has got to ruffle his feathers. And if that means pushing him off the track or bumping into him, he's got it. I said the exact same thing. And then I had a bunch of people come at me, go, oh, so you're saying he should ride dirty? And I'm like, well,
it's not dirty. And again, it's legs. Everything gets taken out of context to the, these days, and everyone has an opinion. But I agree with you. You don't need to be dirty, and it's not about being dirty, but you have to get in there and ruffle the feathers. Exactly what you said. If the door's open, get in there and throw your wheel in and rough him up a little bit, Yeah,
because to your point, Chad, that is when we say we're looking for chinks in his armor. Anderson brake checking him and blocking him a little bit at San Diego. He melted down.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a full come apart.
Yeah, I didn't see enough of that to comment on it, but yeah, I agree with you that it seemed from the outside looking in, it was the first time that we've seen him vulnerable, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to ask about Chase Sexton because I would say right now he probably, I mean, and the points show this. He's leading points now. He's been the second most impressive guy to Jet for me. Just personal opinion here. His starts are good. He's executing well. He's getting wins when he can get them, settling in for a good, solid position when he can't. Um, and I worry that Chase may become like the new Wyndham. You know, he had to deal with Eli in his prime, and now it's Jets coming into his own, and it's like as good as Chase Sexton is, and he does have that one title from last year already, but he's going to have to take a lot of seconds to Jet. Like he's just in that he's kind of in between the era of two really great riders.
I think Chase looks much more mature this year, you know, and I think that like we've seen this play out several other, different ways, but it's a little bit of the Roger and Ian, thing happening. I think that, that team is a solid organization, and I think that going there and, Roger's influence seems like I feel like I can see it because he he doesn't look 100% comfortable, but he looks solid.
Yeah.
And sometimes to be a Supercross champion, you just have to be solid, and you have to kind of find and race your way into the sweet spot. And I don't know if he finds it, but it looks like for somebody that doesn't look 100%, at his best right now, he's still forced. What gives me confidence from a fan watching it on the couch, he still made and he kept it at about 1.7 to about 2.4, 2.8 seconds behind Jet, and Jet
Mm-hmm.
made a lot of little mistakes that we saw on the broadcast. We missed it during the thing, but then they kind of went back and showed us on a highlight, and so I think that Chase needs to find he's whatever it is that he's trying to find that allows him to push the limit a little more, and that natural speed comes back. And then I agree with you, he just needs to be possibly the more seasoned guy, and then use your speed if you have it, and then be solid when you don't have it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bruce, you got anything to add there?
Well, no, it just kind of goes. I mean, I think just this past race, it's the Jet you expect, and the way it just looks is if Jet doesn't crash, he wins the race. So
Yeah, it's been it. I was worried about that coming into the season. This could be like the start of an era where a guy just runs it, and then we saw some fight from other guys, and I think Anderson was sick all week. He didn't want that leaked prior to the race. I think we can talk about now. He'd kind of been dealing with something,
yeah,
and maybe that affected him a little bit. Detroit, so I'm not writing him off yet because he certainly has showed kind of the fight of the old Jason Anderson this year, and I'd love to see that come back. Webb, you certainly don't count out. He was fourth. Kenny Roxon was third. I want to talk about him a little bit. He's not had a great year. He's been
fastest
riding
lap
better.
time.
He's been riding better than his results show. And anytime he gets rutted or mucky, he's always a threat.
I would agree on Kenny. Like, it's been a really weird year. Like Kenny's made, I would say, like, just not Kenny like, mistakes, like him crashing out of San Diego or wherever it was in the mud. Like, that was a little bit weird for me. Like, some of the crashes that he's having are kind of just odd. So it'll be interesting to see if he can, like, this podium puts him back in, back in the swing of things, because it seems like to me the only ones that have like the Jet speed, at least in Detroit, it seemed like Kenny and Cooper Webb were the ones that had the speed to go with Jet possibly. But they just were never in the position to do it. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I seen.
All right. So I think we kind of all agree. Ken Roxon definitely has shown the speed. He's got more in the tank and he can get more podiums, but there has been some weird mistakes. I agree. So interesting to see how he develops through the season, and his trajectory typically as he gets worse. as the season goes on. But maybe him being Supercross only, that'll change. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Let's talk about Cooper Webb, who was fourth on the night. What are your thoughts there? I mean, obviously with Coop, I've seen him these last few years preseason. I'm like, oh, he looks a little heavy. I wonder if he didn't do the work. And then he comes out, though, and he's just the same old Henri Cooper Webb, man. He does not give up. He's best. His last 5 laps of the race are his best laps. So good at adapting to the track when it's beat up. Do you think he's got the ability to stay in this fight, Chad?
I think he needs to get better starts, and I think he just needs to continue the confidence. I think that Coop is, and I can relate to it. Coop's a guy that I think thrives on confidence. You know, I think that once the things that he believes can happen start to happen and fall into place, then everything kind of snowballs in the right direction. I just think that Cooper, he's a fighter. And it's funny because he always looks like what you said, but yet when you see him in real life, it's not like he's thick or anything like that. He's still he's really small, you know, like actually. And so it's always weird sometimes I wonder it's how he runs that ridiculous chest protector underneath with no backing on it. And it just I think it just hangs down and makes him look that way. But,
yeah. And like he's got a little boiler.
Yeah, no, and it is, but he's like, it's so funny that he's just not, but he's such a small little guy. I think that, like, for me personally, like going back to his change, like I thought it was a sideways move. I didn't really look at it being bigger or better. I thought it was just a move that was just going to be right for him. And I think that he's starting to find his way, and I hope that because he was even good in practice this weekend, meaning like the overall times, where normally he's not a great qualifier. So the fact that the speed's there in practice shows that something's gelling right for him, and we just need to see him get a good start and fight with Jet.
Agreed. And I think that new Yamaha 450, it's a lot more compact. It fits a smaller rider, and I say that from experience because it fits me better. And so for a guy that's his stature, I think he, as he gets the suspension and chassis just really tuned to what he wants, he's going to be dangerous on that thing. It's a good bike for him, and he's already shown it a bit. But I think these tracks back east, if he can just start a little better, you're right. His starts just seems like he's always starting just a little too far back. He needs to be in that 3rd, 4th, 5th. And he's always like 7th through 10th, having to come through those guys, and the leaders are gone.
Yeah, and it's just a lot. Like, it's just a lot of, like, you burn up too much energy, you burn up too much free track. You can't give any of the guys, actually, like, you can't give Chase free track, you can't give Jet, you can't give Anderson. You give Roxon free track, like, he's going to run and hide. So, I think that Supercross has not changed since the McGrath days of that level of, good guys can just lay down 10 solid laps, and it's just hard to eat that up,
Yeah.
Anderson was 5th. We mentioned him a little bit, just maybe being a little under the weather. And that's actually what it looked like to me. Like, he just didn't quite have the fire, because at Anaheim too, he was a savage. He was passing people like his life depended on it, and it was impressive. I think we'll see that come back in Phoenix. My opinion, we'll see what happens. AP was 6th.
I was going to just comment. The only thing I was going to say on Anderson is I mean, he got ate up. I think 2 people passed him. Like, Ferrandis passed him, and I think AP passed him. And then it's like he got a second wind, and he just came back by both of them. So the fact that he was sick is really impressive, that he found a second, like, okay, nah, I can't lay over. I can't be sick. I got to go, and that shows some serious, contention, wanting to fight and limit the bad days, so that impresses me.
Yeah. And I think Anderson and Cooper Webb are those 2 that you talked earlier, Chad, about, kind of getting Jet off his game, getting in there earlier, showing them that front wheel. I feel like those are the 2 guys that could really do that to a Jet.
Yeah, only one's currently proven to do it. So
yeah. Yep.
There was something Anderson said. This was 2 years ago, his first year with Cowie. You remember, he was crashing a lot, but he was bouncing into people, but getting some heat race wins, and actually won some mains. And you remember he was getting static for being like too gnarly, too aggressive. And he went, "Hey, I'm just trying. Like, I want to win, and I'm doing everything I can." And I really appreciated that answer, because he's like, I'm paid to win races. You want me to just settle in back here and coast along to fourth? He goes, I'm trying everything I can to win. And it was a really simple answer, but I'm like, yeah. I mean, what you gonna get mad at this guy for just trying? Like, he's doing what he's supposed to do. I love that attitude. I really like his take on things.
100%. Play the cards you got.
AP is in sixth from the weekend, but he's still in this title fight. He's second, or third rather, only 2 points out of the lead. We've seen a huge improvement from him this year, just in general. Of course, freaking new fan favorite. He's like the new K-Dub. But do you think that he's got it to stay in this thing through the whole season?
My opinion is that we're seeing AP, because really he hasn't shown that he's really capable of doing this on a 450 up until this year. And so I think you're seeing the beginning of him, like we see this weekend. He showed up for the heat race, and then he was so-so in the main event. The week before he was, so-so in the heat, but good in the main. And so I think that you're seeing flashes, and I think that that's the process of him learning and building. And because never winning a race in the class and then winning it and then having the red plate and then continuing to have the red plate, it's a lot of pressure for somebody that's never had that before. And like you said, and he even referenced it. I don't know if it was during the broadcast, it was like a highlight on him, or if he said it after the race, but he acknowledged the pressure and how gnarly it was on the last lap when he was going to go win, and the feeling of the crowd just screaming. And I personally have experienced that, and it's next level. Nobody can tell you how that feels. You have to feel that for yourself, because talk about being nervous. That's like a whole nother level. And so I think he's trying to find his way in this new normal for him, and I think he's doing a good job of, figuring it out.
I do too. And it's a lot of mental strength, Chad, huh? Like you said, dealing with those pressures and those situations that you've never been in.
It's all mental. Honestly,
it's one
not,
of the things.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else. It's just 100% mental. And, you can't win a heat race and then be, what do you get, sixth in the main event just because, it's it really is just mental, and it's learning, and it's just ticking those boxes and learning week in and week out what that experience and, is all about. And that's what I see happening.
Well, he's obviously the nicest stinking guy in the pits. Everybody's pulling for him. I hope he can keep growing mentally and get himself to where he sees himself as a podium guy, because he's got the ability. What about Dylan Ferrandis? He was seventh on the night. He's had some great flashes this year. I talked to Jimmy Button a little bit about him, and he said, honestly, he really just likes outdoors better. He has some goals for Supercross. He goes, but if he can just get through the season healthy, he goes, I think he'll be a title contender outdoors. And I thought that was interesting. I'm like, yeah, he's a two-time Supercross champ on the 250, though. Like, it's not like he can't ride it,
Yeah, and that, I guess, if that's real and it's factual and, it's not just an agent talking, that bums me a little bit, because I don't know, you kind of, most people that think and try to just make it through Supercross never normally make it through Supercross. So I hope that he starts to fight, because I'm impressed with, I know what that feeling's like to go from a full factory rider to, for the most part, a privateer team. But you're probably around a group of guys that you really enjoy. You're riding a bike that you like. And as the process goes along, I don't know how much, material Honda's handing out, but I see that, he's riding at the Honda track and stuff. So I'm sure that they share, some stuff. And so I think
it's
that
parts. You know the routine. Like, he gets transmission, he gets some parts, some electronics, but Ziggy's doing all the suspension, which I think is fine. Ziggy, Ziggy dialed.
Yeah, suspension. Yeah, at this level today, anybody can have good suspension. The components, I don't believe, matter. I think it's just the technician, and Ziggy's more than capable of making a motorcycle that can win races.
I did notice there's a tire change this weekend too.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Did he go back to Dunlops?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. I mean, I'm not surprised by that, but yeah, that's interesting because he was on Pirellis
Yeah.
and going back to Dunlop. Yeah, that's a big thing. And yeah, I mean, Dunlop's tough to beat. It might not always be the best, but when everybody else is on it, it eliminates any question in your own head. I think that they have a really solid Supercross tire. So no, it's interesting. I guess I'm not on the inside watching it, like I used
Yeah.
to, but that's funny. I'm not surprised by that.
Well, I had heard some chatter about that he was unhappy with the tires he was on. So that's really interesting. And Reedy, you know this too really well, because I remember back in the what would this have been? Late 90s, maybe early 2000s, Bridgestone had the tire that everybody wanted. And if you weren't on this
Yeah.
Bridgestone, it was like, there's no way you could win. Have
My
you
first
experienced that?
my first year on the factory Yamaha was my first year on Bridgestones, which was '03. So I was Bridgestones '03 through 2010, and I mean they were just unbelievable. Dunlop has come a long way, and Dunlop, in that era, didn't even they just had nothing for Bridgestone. But since Dunlop has basically inherited, all the Bridgestone riders, Dunlop's done a great job of making their tire, bridging that gap. It's hard to say because it's been so long, but Bridgestones in the era were unbelievable.
Did you ever have find yourself on an inferior tire going, I got to get on those tires? Or
Oh
were you
no,
always kind
like
of on the sweet spot?
I was on him. I was always lucky enough to be on him. Like all the whole time when we're getting off subject, but like when we were talking about like where Ricky, it was kind of like, oh, the Honda. Honestly, half of the problem I think was the tire. Like the Bridgestone was just so much better
Hmm.
in the whoop, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
But
crazy. I
anyway,
don't think people
yeah,
realize that. I had done some testing with a couple other brands, and I'm like, you can get the rear to work decent, but the front, whoops, and in G outs and rut stuff, like the front is so critical. That's
very.
what I found. And even even something that's not quite as good, man. We talk about how important the mental game is, and knowing you have a slight disadvantage, it sucks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's really it. Just him, he's eliminating any question in his mind that, even if it was, you know, a little good here, a little, not as bad there, but just now you don't even have to think about it. Now you run the tire that everybody else has and you concentrate on the racetrack and going
Yeah,
fast.
Yeah.
absolutely. What about Hunter Lawrence in eighth? How have you guys seen his season going? To me, it seems like a pretty good, normal rookie season for a guy like Hunter. A 250 champion moves up. He obviously unlucky at the first one, not entirely his fault. He got, Vince Freeze crossed his path, and that's what happens. Um, but since then he's put some top tens in. I feel like he's learning. He's up there, kind of in the mix each weekend.
I 100% agree. I mean, he's a rookie, and I think the hard thing is he has a brother that's winning, and I think it's a tough one for him. I think he's kind of like somewhat in a lose-lose, but I see him, he's riding well. He's not throwing it on the ground. He's in the top 10, like you said. So I think he's doing a solid job.
Anything to add, Bruce?
Yeah, I think people like Chad said, they're just focused on Jet, on how well he's doing. And I feel Jet's just kind of that just, he's it's just rare to have a kid like that. So I think where Hunter is, I think he's doing just fine as a rookie. I do, and I think he's going to keep progressing as the season goes on. But yeah, it's funny because like people think, oh well, his brother's winning, so he should be winning. It's that's just not the case. So
Yeah, two things. I think it would be really hard to have a little brother beating you just every weekend. Like, I think that would be
yeah,
very difficult. And they kudos to them for balancing it and not having any infighting in the family. And two, if you take Jet out of the picture and just look at Hunter as his own rider,
right.
I think he's right. He's doing just everything he needs to do. He's learning.
Yep.
He's smooth. He's not eating shit left and right like a lot of these rookies we see.
Mm-hmm.
And you give him a year or two, I bet he's he's up there fighting for podiums and could make some
Yep.
big
And
improvements.
even even go back to what you talked about with Burner, and it's like, Hunter for the most part is probably doing everything Jet's doing. He's probably in the gym with him. He's on the bicycle. He's doing the laps. And if Jet is that ridiculously good during the week, here's Hunter trying to bridge the gap, and his brother's just lighting it up Monday through Friday. And it just probably just, you beat yourself up all week thinking that you've got this big gap to make. And so it's a mental, it's like this pluses and minuses of, riding with people of Jet's caliber,
Yeah, if he can
Yep.
keep from getting like discouraged, man, there's nothing better than having the fastest guy in the world riding with you every single day, right? Speaking of rookies, Justin Cooper in ninth. I've been super impressed with this guy. Even
Me
last
too.
year when he filled in on the 450, top 10s every time. And he's had fastest qualifier at A2. And pretty much, I'd have to go back and look at all of them, but he's been in the top 10 almost every time.
Yeah.
I see Justin getting a podium.
I do too. I
Yeah,
think it's
me too.
very, very real.
If we
Me
see
too.
Justin find his, kind of 250 hole shots that he would get, a
Starts,
couple of
yeah.
years ago and starts, I see him being a real threat because he looks good on it. And again, going back to what you said, Ping, that new Yamaha seems to fit the smaller riders, and when I watch him, he looks really capable of, like the bike. It's not like it looks like a lot of bike for him, and he looks really good and comfortable, and actually, honestly, looks way better on that in Supercross than he does on a 250. So he looks really good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have him for, I think definitely before this season ends, you're going to see him on the podium for sure, many times. So that's how I see it.
Okay, let's talk about the biggest question mark of the night. And that's Eli Tomac. He went all the way back to 10th. And I've been trying to pay attention and watch and listen to everything I can about what's going on with him at the opener. He did the fade a little bit. Like I said, I spoke with his family. They said they made a fork change last minute, which was a huge mistake. He didn't like the feel of it. His hands and arms cramped up, pumped up. Then the mud races, he was better. And I thought, okay, they're figuring it out. But mud races are mud races, right? A2, he gets a win in one of the mains. He looks good in the others. And he was running the pace and ran it they were shorter, but he ran the pace. It wasn't a pace issue. But this weekend, boy, he started right up front. We had, I thought, the perfect storm brewing. We had Eli, Jet, Chase, Anderson,
Chase.
all of them right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Thought, we're going to see the fight. This is what we all want to see. And then, boy, Eli just started heading backwards. The top three sort of gapped out. Roxon came from about 7th, got into 3rd, and it really wasn't a great race, to be honest with you, to watch. But the thing with Eli going backwards was just a head scratcher.
Yeah, and there was a couple of points in that race too where he was literally like just letting guys go by, like, yeah, hey, pass me. So yeah, that was very interesting.
Well, when you get arm pump like that, you can't do anything, right?
No,
like,
you can't put up a fight.
He's not liking his fork setup, and it's causing his arms to pump up. I mean, Eli's not out of shape. He's not tired. This is something wrong.
And this is just stuff that I kind of heard. So, you know how that goes in the sport. But I did hear that he wasn't happy with the bike setup last night, which caused him to get arm pump.
Reedy, talk a little bit about feel, because I know at that level, feel is everything. And it surprises me they don't just go back to what he won the title on last year. Obviously, he was comfortable with that, but whatever they're trying and changing, it's not working, and he's not having the feel that he wants.
Yeah, I agree. And technically, he didn't win the title last year. He threw it away.
Sorry. I meant the opener. He won the opener.
He was close to.
But I mean, dude, last year he was, it was the first year on that new bike, and we had seen that there was a transition, from the last bike to the new bike, and at times, when I was watching on TV, I didn't really always think the balance looked great on his bike, but he always made it work. And so it's hard to argue of like a guy that doesn't always look comfortable, but yet makes it work. So, but then I think that when you look at the field last year, it thinned out really quickly. And so I think that there was some, possible, like some of the things that I feel like I saw last year, I'm seeing now. You just got a bunch of guys that are, come out swinging, and he's probably, come off an injury and isn't comfortable. But feel is everything. I mean, I think some riders need it. Some, like for me personally, like if I had no feel, it was like I was for the most part as good as Eli was last night. Like it just, it was miserable. I never dealt with arm pump. The only time I've ever had arm pump was when I was hanging out with Ping in England last year. And so the whole arm pump thing it's not something that I have a whole lot of, like I don't have any data on it. Like as a professional, I never had arm pump, and it was never a thing that I ever struggled with. And so even when I wasn't comfortable or I wasn't winning or like I wasn't happy, like arm pump wasn't a thing for me. And so, it just, yeah, it was really strange to see a guy of his caliber rolling over for the most part. And I have to think, like
Yeah.
you said, if he had arm pump that bad, he probably just had no fight in him, and he really just had to get to the checkered flag because but the thing that's probably the biggest thing that I would say from just being a couch racer is that when I looked at the race that he won last week to this track, the tracks look pretty similar in the way that they, the whoops and the dirt,
Yeah.
like Anaheim, like they kind of like Anaheim 2 was still pretty ruddy. It kind of had hard packing areas, and Detroit kind of looked really similar. So it's a little bit surprising that though on TV, and I want to emphasize the TV because obviously I wasn't there, so it's hard to say. Maybe it was completely different, but just on TV, it looked similar to me. And obviously, I've raced Anaheim a lot, and I've raced Detroit a lot, and I could see that they would be the same in some areas. So yeah, just strange that he was so far off.
Yeah, very strange, and I'm I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered in a lot of ways with this field. If we're looking at points right now, Sexton took the red plate back, Jets 1 point back, AP's 2 points back, Webb is 6 back. So our top four within 6 points, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then you got Anderson at 14 back and Eli 16 back. And my next question is this: like, at what point is it, not full panic, but like 16 points is starting to get to be a lot?
16 points is a lot when you got guys, that are showing consistency. But I don't think you rely on it because of the year that he had last year. But you also have to acknowledge that Jet, he is a rookie, and I just, as perfect as he was last year, you as a rider, and then this is just the rider in me. At some point, you still have to, rely on trying to make him make mistakes or to be the best version of your own self. Because I feel like at the best Eli or the best Chase, they can throw down laps with Jet, and that's what they're going to have to do to make him vulnerable.
Yeah, you're going to have to put some pressure on him. I agree. So if you had to pick somebody right now, Reedy, you had to lay down $100,000 on who's winning this title. Who do you pick? Where's your money go?
Oh, geez. Ellie says I'm not allowed to bet anymore. I'm banned from gambling.
This is all hypothetical.
So, I mean, it would be really hard to put real money against Jet. I think that Jet, he just has a couple of things that, that in his arsenal that no one else has. A few of the mistakes that I've seen, like his mistake last week at Anaheim 2. I mean, he was a lap away from kind of carrying all the momentum, and then he kind of just lost it and gave it back. But then he regained it again this weekend, and I think he's the hungriest. Ellie just kind of say I agree with that. I think he believes that he can win, and he doesn't see himself losing. Where I really question that the rest of the field truly believe that they can beat him, and that worries me a little bit. And I just think he's mentally stronger and better than those guys, even though he's a rookie and he's 20 years old.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. If you look at, let's say, Sexton, he probably still has some questions about bike and, and finding that feel and getting, gelling with the team. And maybe that comes in the next couple of weeks, but maybe he's still working through it even later into the season. Eli obviously has some issues he's working through. The only other guy that could be, it's just really hard to know what's going on in his head, is Webb. And I think if there was a challenge to Webb, it comes in Sexton, or a challenge to Jett, it comes from Webb and Sexton. And Webb might be my pick to like really get up there. And if someone needs to rough Jett up, Webb's kind of the guy. Like that's
I think Webb's our wild card. I think Chase. What makes me nervous about Chase is, again, I'm not on the inside and listening, to everything like I once upon a time did, and I don't know how close or far away he is, or how happy or unhappy he is. But if he really is chasing something that it looks like from the outside, it gets really challenging now, because now everybody transitions back to Florida. They're out of California. You're leaving the team. You're kind of become more independent. And that may be good. Maybe now he just gets to go and do his laps, and, he gets to go have fun, during the week and do the work, and then show up on the race weekends rather than testing all week. So you never know which way that's going to go. But if he really is chasing something, it's hard to chase something when you're out of the state of California, and then you're forcing the team to come to, Florida to test and all those kinds of things. That's kind of what I see.
That's a great point. They probably air through this coming weekend, and then that's it, right? Everybody will head east.
Yeah, like you said, like I forgot that this weekend was Phoenix. So maybe they went back to California this week because it will be a short flight, and then get the one last week of testing in. But then it's a quick turnaround. Like maybe they, it's a little bit of a breakup. They get to ride Daytona. The team typically comes out before Daytona and does something. So it might be good timing. But just after that, I would like to see that he's kind of firing on all cylinders.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be a great season. It's good news for all of us fans, because there's still questions and nothing is guaranteed at this point, which is cool.
No, I agree with you, King. It's really fun, and actually, I get to go to my first Supercross. I get to go to Phoenix this weekend, so I'm really excited.
Oh, rad! Well, that's good news. Fans that are headed to Phoenix, you might see the old 2-2 rolling through. I appreciate you taking the time, man. Thank Ellie for loaning you to us. I just love to get your take on stuff. You have a lot of insight and not afraid to call a spade either, which I love.
Yeah, it's always good to hear. Yeah, always good to hear your opinion on things, Chad, for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, maybe we can drag you on one of these trips on the road in a couple weeks.
For hours.
Ellie, we would have been doing the same talk anyway, so we just record it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Perfect. Well, hey, drive safe. Thanks for joining us, and folks, as always, pop back on Thursday. We'll be doing a site lap, looking ahead to Phoenix and talking about that, and maybe we can get Chad Reed to jump on here down the road and join us again. So thanks, Reedy. Bruce, thank you. We'll see you guys soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos, comment what you thought, and share it with your friends.